It's Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV, your radio and online.
So let's take a look at today's front pages. Now, the Sunday Times leads on the Prime Minister's U-turn on green policies.
The Observer says Boris is facing fury in rural areas for his new post-Brexit food strategy.
Let's see if we can see the Express. That was the Observer there.
Oh, there we go.
Look at this, the Express there. They're calling on the Prince of Wales to stay out of politics after rumours swirl around about his disapproval of the Rwanda plan.
But the Mail on Sunday has the Home Secretary's rebuke to Prince Charles on the Rwanda plan.
And let's go to the Sunday Telegraph. That covers the ongoing civil war in the Conservative Party over taxation.
The Sunday Mirror has new hopes for justice in the Jamie Bulger case. Oh, that's interesting.
Well, it's about Jamie Bulger's mother, who's very, very worried that one of his killers is going to be let out on parole and basically set free again. And it seems so sad because it's such a long time ago, and she spent 20-odd years always with that worry that because they were so young, Jamie Bulger's killers, it comes up time and again, the idea of them being set free and being on parole and whatever. And she sort of feels that it's a constant battle. She's never, ever going to be able to stop battling. And she's going to see Dominic Raab about it, apparently.
Okay, look, let's look through some of those papers with Spiked editor Tom Slater and anthropologist Mariana Hotter. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Tom, let's start with the Mail on Sunday. Looking at the Rwanda situation.
Yeah, so we will not back down on Rwanda, Charles, is the headline here, so very much kind of following on from those explosive reported comments from the Prince in the papers yesterday, as well as kind of looking ahead to the battles that Priti Patel still has in terms of implementing this particular policy. We saw that initial ruling at the High Court, which allowed the first flight on Tuesday, the deportation flight, to take place, but there's ongoing legal challenges and obviously an ongoing kind of political battle over this policy. I myself don't support this policy. I think outsourcing your migration policy in that way is not a good idea. I think it kind of keeps it at arm's length and also could potentially lead to some quite unpleasant consequences. But I think what this really gets to grips with is the fact of who decides what that policy is. I mean, you've got a government that said it wanted to do something about this, which is in the process of passing legislation to do so, and yet you see again kind of these legal boundaries via these legal challenges essentially trying to stop an elected government from implementing its stated policy. So I think if we're going to challenge policies like this, you've got to do it in the political and democratic realm, not just by the courts, or certainly not by Prince Charles, I would dare say.
What do you think about Prince Charles saying that he thought it was appalling, but that was a private conversation? I mean, do you think he's not yet king, and so does he have to keep his opinions entirely to himself? Maybe he feels it's important to let the people know that that's what he thinks.
Well, I think he's got to be a lot more circumspect if he wants to kind of hold on to his particular position, because of course everyone has private conversations. So I'm sure the Queen has all kinds of private conversations. She's managed to keep a lid on any of that because it's so important that the monarch stays neutral. I think I'm a Republican myself. I think Charles is going to be a gift to the
You're a Republican?
Yeah.
Are you?
So, and I think it can
Calm down.
because of the fact that he just demonstrates that whilst I think a lot of people understand we have a lot of affection and support for the Queen, she's done the role very well. She has, again, studiously stayed out of politics. But Charles has never really been able to do that. He said that when he becomes king, that will all change. But I think things like this suggest that he still might not be able to quite keep his opinions to himself.
I think it's a really old-fashioned notion that the royals have to be this kind of lofty thing that floats above the dirty everyday, back and forth of politics, because she is, whether you're Republican or not, she kind of represents us, and the royal family are this kind of entity that sits in our lives, whether Republican or otherwise, and it just seems really odd to me, that whole thing around proroguing Parliament, and that she has to then stand up and kind of announce that her Parliament has decided to do this thing, which you suspect she thinks is absolutely terrible. She understands what she's being asked to do, and she has to do it because she's staying politically neutral. Things like...
It is a perverse situation,
we've decided we're going to deport all these vulnerable people to a third country. It doesn't matter whether it's Rwanda or somewhere else. It's so strange to me to think that every week she sits down with Boris Johnson and has that conversation. Oh, so tell me about these plans about you exporting these people to Rwanda. Tell me about exactly what happened with those parties the night the night before Prince Philip's funeral. It just seems really strange to me that we expect her to keep her mouth shut.
Apparently she's brilliant at dealing with conversations that try and get an opinion out of her. She always turns it round into a question. So, I mean, if somebody were to say to her privately or otherwise, you know, what do you think of this Rwanda plan? She would say, what do you think? Is it And apparently she always does that. That's how she gets out of the problem.
Yeah.
Because she does have to keep out of politics. And whilst, you know, obviously expecting any human being to act as if they're completely kind of have no opinions whatsoever is such a strange position to be in. I think a far more perverse situation would be someone being able to have an even more outsized role in politics just by accident of their birth. And I'd much rather have a bad Prime Minister and a bad Parliament than a good king, just because democracy is much more important.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely discuss.
The Sunday Times, Mary, looking at the Prime Minister turning his back on the green agenda.
Yeah, speaking of bad prime ministers,
But no, come on. I mean, yes, he is reversing some of the green agenda, but in favour of food security. That's the plan.
But whilst also not helping the farmers out to be able to grow more food.
Yeah, in favour of very, very short-term political capital, I would suggest, because the reason that you might want to look at a rewilding scheme, the reason you might want to be thinking about planting trees along a riverbank is not because you like butterflies, it's because if you don't have pollinators, your agricultural food crops are not going to be pollinated. It means that the housing estate that has been built near to that river will get flooded again. I mean, next, it's kind of ironic because next to, literally on the same front page, we've got a kind of a weather story about, you know, this insane heat wave that's going to hit the UK in a few days' time. Those two things are linked. The fact that we've had this weird June with gale force winds, but also really heavy rain that came on the back of a massive drought, those impacts are hugely felt by farmers and are hugely felt by the kind of the land managers and the food producers. Yeah, we do need to definitely back our own food producers, but we also need to make sure that that is something that is sustainable so that our kids can also know that we can grow food. And to do that, the kind of the clue is in the name, it's nature recovery. If we carry on doing as we're doing, it's not.
Why do you think
it doesn't keep producing?
I mean, during COP26, when he was coming up and he was talking green, and he was talking the green agenda, and we know that his wife has quite an influence on him as far as green issues are concerned. Why do you think he's pulling back on this, watering down this policy?
I think it's because he's on the political back foot, and that Conservative heartland support is in that kind of slightly nationalistic, not very helpful agenda of, you know, we need sovereignty, we need food sovereignty, we need to, you know, take back control, go back to some kind of nostalgic.
Is the idea.
Well, is that actually what's going to happen?
Well, I don't know.
Because these policies are being rolled back, but this was supposed to be a trial that would then roll out to fill in where the basic agri payments, so that, you know, the thing which everyone was up in arms about who were anti-EU some decades back, saying, oh, actually, this is... Do I have to stop?
You do.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Just getting started.
And it's not because we're cancelling you, it's that we've got to squeeze in a load more stuff.
Yeah.
We're out of time.
Coming back.
Anyway, it's short-termist.
Okay.
It's short-term, and that's not good for farmers, or good for food security, or good for the cost of living.
Okay. Hopefully hear from some farmers on that one, because I'd love to get their views.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll hear from you.
Tom, Marianne, thank you. Back with you a little bit later on.